So I can feel for her there in that autopsy scene. Most of the writers on our show have attended postmortem exams as part of our training, but I can report firsthand that both male and female writers have gotten queasy at the sight of a Y incision being... Hollywood is so glamorous, isn't it? Yeah. So, anyway, that's something I thought I'd never do, and I hope I never have to do again. Frankly, forensics isn't something I thought about much prior to the day I read the pilot for CSI. Most of the shows and films I'd seen featured cops and detectives solving the mystery, occasionally stopping in to see some odd fellow in a lab coat get some test results. Forensic scientists prior to the year 2000 just didn't get much airtime. And maybe they didn't seem that exciting, or maybe their work seemed too repulsive. It certainly seemed that way when all the networks, except for CBS, passed on CSI, Anthony Zeiger's idea, back in 2000. And even after the pilot was produced, it was the last show of the season to get picked up and put on the schedule. Much of the unpalatable content, the maggots on bloody corpses and the like, had been cut out of the first episode. Even the first production company, Touchstone, dumped the project. The general response was, nobody wants to see that on television. Fair enough. The audiences, however, gave it an overwhelmingly positive response. And this dark horse pilot, maggots and all, premiered to huge viewership, so much so that some of the executives who worked on the show thought the Nielsen overnight ratings were a mistake. Another surprise was when the audience learned that the ratings were leaning aggressively towards women 25 to 45. They'd found their audience. Everybody loved Gil Grissom, of course, our intellectual patriarch, who lacked slightly in the area of emotional finesse. His approval sought by all members of his team. And while imperfect, he was their rock. But as showrunner Carol Mendelsohn once observed, if Gil Grissom is the soul of CSI, then Catherine Willows is the heart. And just because you're the heart of the show doesn't mean you can't be qualified to take the boss's job or save his life once in a while. All right. And we're off. Someday.
Did you come here to tell me about your new job?
I told the sheriff I'd pass.
You don't want to be a supervisor?
Well, if I get a promotion, I want it to be on merit. Not because you're politically tone deaf. You all right?
The reversal of the damsel in distress. There must be some correlation between what girls and women have seen on these television forensic shows and the influx of women coming into forensic careers. This is now what is known as the positive side of the CSI effect. And perhaps some that watch may believe that if they become a CSI, they'll get to wear high-heel shoes and Prada clothes to crime scenes, and that their hair and makeup will look excellent after a double shift. But I think most people understand that that's just Hollywood. I'm pretty sure that no career is quite as glamorous as a career portrayed on television. And of course, as with trials on legal shows and operations on medical shows, forensic shows also must take artistic license, with the element of time specifically. The complicated process of analyzing DNA evidence can take weeks to months in order to produce a viable result. That obviously does not work for a 44-minute episode. And so I would be remiss if not to mention the negative side of the CSI effect. The criticism in general is that a little education may be a bad thing. Juries have come to expect the same lab technology and efficiency that they see on their TV. And unfortunately, while technology featured on our show has been invented, it's not necessarily widely available, especially at labs where taxpayer dollars purchase the equipment and not Jerry Bruckheimer. In fact, no laboratory in the United States, with the possible exception of the FBI's Quantico in Virginia, is really quite as high-tech, sophisticated, or well-funded as the one that we have on Stage 24 in Universal Studios. As a sidebar to the CSI effect, my husband was recently called into jury duty on a criminal trial. The defense attorney asked, "What does your wife do for a living?" He was immediately dismissed from his civic duty. He got the feeling they were not our biggest fans. But we have noticed a meta trend occurring while we've attempted to stay on the cutting edge of what's happening in forensic labs. While not being speculative, we're keeping at least a few minutes in the future, assisted in no small part by the expert technical advisors who are keeping us informed of the latest new happenings, and the giant science tech companies who are eager to have the newest and greatest gadgets featured on prime time. And so exists the line between fiction that features science and science fiction. And it may be just a matter of a few minutes, depending on what lab you're at. So, but back to our heroines. There's no absolute formula in figuring out who these characters were. We were exceptionally fortunate when a former CSI named Elizabeth Devine came to advise on the first season of the show, and she helped model the characters by looking at her own stages in her career. So Sarah Seidel, the younger CSI, Liz helped her by taking on characteristics of what a rookie might feel like in the field, or the similar emotions that they go through while they're getting used to what is a can be a very traumatic emotionally and mentally profession. Catherine Willows, on the other hand, Liz Devine tells me, is herself as a more senior CSI after she's done with that part and has moved on. So there's a little bit of this one actual woman in both of our characters. The writers wanted to be able to show the vulnerabilities of these female characters without compromising their integrity. They're not Superwoman. Characters without flaws are not terribly interesting. This is also done with the male characters. We touch on addiction, medical problems, hot tempers, but their frailties usually don't involve their gender. Catherine Willows used to be a stripper to put herself through college. That's how she became a CSI. Well, okay, again, there's some artistic license, though I have heard cases of people who have done that. Most of the murder victims on our show are usually attractive young women in lingerie. And I don't think we'll be winning any feminism awards for that anytime soon. But it's television, it's Jerry Bruckheimer television, and we're doing what we can. Suffice it to say, Catherine Willows is the exotic dancer turned hardworking single mother.